Welcome in the fourth part of the series How to Respond to Cultural Specifics and Universals. This will be about intersectionality. My name is Helena Tužinska. I am from Faculty of Arts, Comenius University in Bratislava. At first glance, this is an ordinary picture with animals. At second glance, it is not. Can you see a peacock? Can you see a snake? Can you see a giraffe or a deer? Is there a camel or zebra? So what about the context which is influencing our communication? If our minds can be so easily lured. Remember the first glance, it was just animals. The second, this is where we are getting rid of stereotypes. So if we try to identify other people, what is happening in our minds? There are so many other stereotypes beside the ethnic ones. But how can we understand the other variables? Let us use the optics of intersectionality. Great. So what would happen if we identified with the creators in the first picture? What would happen if we gave up the widespread belief that people behave in a certain way just because they are Spanish, Bulgarian, or Indian? Let's try to place ourselves in the middle of the colored ellipses. In intercultural communication, it depends on how old we are, what our gender is, whom we meet, whether we go to places considered holy, who we vote for, whether and where we went to school, what we do during working hours and in the evenings, whether we have the choice to go to work in the neighborhood and not to go to work at the weekend, even what song we sing. These frequencies are not only like our skin or our feathers. Understanding across cultures can come from this very point, from being in the in-between. Well, what does it have to do with communication patterns? Let us take a look into Cultural Atlas once more. Please select a culture you are familiar with, perhaps your own and also less well known to you. Then read carefully the part about communication. How did our feelings differ after reading the known and the less known culture? Let us compare our own views not between the cultures, but in relation to the diversity of our own experience. Can we remember what different groups of people we have come into contact with in our culture and in the other one? How close have we been to people who have different choices than ourselves? What other variables were more important, but the language they spoke? Have we noticed that these variables never stay the same? Even if we don't adjust ethnicity, we are changing with our age. The situation varies according to whether we speak with a feminine or a masculine voice. It matters on what territory we are females, males, or non-binaries. The word intercultural seems to refer to the invariance of cultures, but traditions also evolve, with varied statuses, education, experiences, and groups, and perhaps also with history. Ethnicity has not always been the most relevant identifier. Rather, it may have been religion, regional affiliation, or profession. It may be characteristic of ethnically mixed areas to list multiple ethnicities in the census that are equivalent. Therefore, our identities change depending on what waters we are currently swimming in. If it is typical for humans not to remain one species, like these fish, for their entire lives, we can also apply this to intercultural communication with foreigners. At this point, it is worth to remind that according to Thomas Hylland Eriksen, a Norwegian anthropologist, individuals who are members of multiple groups based on different principles, such as class, ethnicity, gender, occupation, religious and political beliefs or others, are less likely to be uncompromisingly investing in conflict than those who define their entire person in relation to a single group, such as a racial or ethnic group most commonly. Eriksen also highlights the possibility of stepping out of the polarity of the usual we and they perspective, and thus framing ethnic contrasts in a non-conflicting way as wehood and ushood, in the sense of seeing oneself equally through the eyes of the other. So what to take away with us? How to prevent misinterpreting in intercultural communication. We can be curious, foremostly curious. That means that we will really ask open questions, not the closed ones, with yes or no answers, but those which start with, can you please tell me more about? Therefore, those things which are strange will become familiar. If we ask for use, not for the meaning, we'll get to the frame of the context, of the perspective of the other. And then we can negotiate. What counts as what? Do we see it through the eyes of the other? We can help ourselves by restating the opponent's views before our own response. And last but not least, let us laugh together. We all have multiple realities, which are funny too.